So for us as practitioners of Buddhism, one of the most important things is going for refuge. Going for refuge is the gateway into Buddhism for the Buddhist practice. So setting bodhicitta motivation is the gateway to the Mahayana, and receiving an initiation is the gateway into the Tantra. So we've begun this teaching by reciting in Tibetan the refuge verse. So we have it also in English and also in Hebrew in the booklet. So this is the going for refuge and the bodhicitta motivation. So we recited it in Tibetan, but actually the first two lines of this verse, they begin with going for refuge, and this is the entrance into Buddhism. So when we set bodhicitta, which is uncontrived, this is for us the entrance into the Mahayana Dharma. So if we still haven't gotten to the stage that our bodhicitta is uncontrived, so at the moment we're making an effort in order to arise it in our mental continuum. So as we said, the initiation is the entrance to mantra or tantra. So as Rinpoche quoted yesterday, the verse which we dealt with in most of the teaching, which is we shouldn't do anything negative and only engage in virtuous actions. We should tame our mind completely. This is the teaching of the Buddha. So when we return back to this verse, the second line says that we should develop a complete virtue and to tame our mind completely. So this shows us, this points us the way. It points the way, especially from the point of view of the Mahayana practice. We should develop complete virtue by applying an antidote to a mind, the mind of self-cherishing, and we do that by generating love and compassion, which are the root, the base of bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment. So developing the mind of enlightenment will overcome the self-cherishing. So developing bodhicitta will outshine, overcome our own self-cherishing. So we want to develop from the Mahayana point of view a mind that cherishes others. And in order to cherish others, we need to develop love and compassion and the mind of enlightenment. But also, if we put a lot of effort into developing the mind of enlightenment, love and compassion, it will not be sufficient, because our mind at the moment is under the control of the afflictive emotions, the attachment, aversion and ignorance. These are what are called the three poisons. And the basis of these three poisons is ignorance, which holds to oneself, self-grasping. So this is the basis for for cyclic existence, the process in which we are born time and again, which is based on our own ignorance, which is self-grasping. So also if we develop love and compassion in the mind of enlightenment, it will be insufficient to apply a true antidote to the root of cyclic existence. For the true antidote, we need to develop wisdom which realizes emptiness. we should develop the wisdom which realizes the true mode of abidance of reality, which is the view of emptiness. So therefore, we need to develop these two aspects, because as we said, without the specific antidote for the root of cyclic existence, that which grasps to the self, we will not be able to be liberated from cyclic existence, even if we develop love, compassion, and bodhicitta. So therefore, we begin with taking refuge. We take refuge in the Buddha, we take refuge in the Dharma, and we take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Sangha. So the Buddha also, the Buddha showed us also the way, not in one lifetime, but life after life in a collection of many lifetimes. The Buddha developed the collections that were necessary to attain Buddhahood. From the sutra point of view, it took the Buddha 3 great eons in order to get to this state, the state of Buddhahood. And along the way, the Buddha also the Buddha generated the mind of enlightenment in order to get to Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. And he developed habits. He had a habit of looking deeper and deeper into the true mode of abidance of reality, and also generating love and compassion, until the state that he generated the mind of enlightenment, the clear light mind, which is the subtlest state of mind which realizes emptiness. So the unification between the two of the clear light mind, which is the deepest, the subtlest state of mind, which is united with emptiness, this has got the power to generate the mode of the antidote to the two obscurations, which finally leads one to beyond cyclic existence and even higher. So, if we ask ourselves, what do we really seek in refuge? Our main refuge is the Dharma. The Buddha for us is the one who set the way, who showed us the way. So the Dharma is a true refuge, is the main refuge for us. And the Sangha are the ones from whom we take example in order to generate the Dharma in our minds, so that we also can get to a state which is beyond a cyclic existence, beyond samsara. So we will go over this first. We shouldn't do any negative action. We should develop complete virtue. We should tame our mind. These are the teachings of the Buddha. So this first teaches us that going for refuge. So we have begun this teaching by reciting the refuge prayer. We did it in Tibetan, and some of us might have the impression that this is what we do traditionally. The tradition teaches us that what we should do at the beginning of teaching is go for refuge, to read, to recite a few things. But Rinpoche is saying that this is actually not what we should do, because this is what is only done in the tradition. But we should think that in order to generate complete virtue, in order to tame our mind completely, we are starting with refuge. So in a more specific way for what we're going to do in the next few days, there are of course many subjects which we can study and discuss in Buddhism, but here what Rinpoche wanted to begin with was discussing the object of emptiness. This is what we will use for meditation, and also we will talk about the mind, the cognition, the knowing of emptiness. So first we can ask ourselves, why is it? What is the importance of discussing this? And this is what Rinpoche is going to emphasize in the next couple of days. So, in order to make an emphasis of this topic, Rinpoche chose to speak about a text who was composed by someone from Amdo in eastern Tibet, and he's called Kongkyen Jamyang Shepa. He composed a short text that gives instructions according to personal instructions of Jamyang Shepa on the way we can meditate about emptiness, the selflessness of the person and phenomena. So when Rinpoche encountered this text, he thought it is so nice and so inspiring, because when we begin to study this, the view of emptiness, we encounter so many texts that explain the view of emptiness. The Buddha taught emptiness in the Sutras of the Perfection of Wisdom. And there are a few sutras about the perfection of wisdom. There is the 100th verse which are divided into 12 volumes, and each one has got 500 pages. And as well as this sutra, there are the text of Buddha Palita, Aryadeva, and Chandrakirti. These are Indian pandits, and there is also a lot of literature that explains other literature that explains emptiness. So when we study this subject, we use a specific text like Nagarjuna, Indian scholar. He composed 5 or 6 texts that explain the logics, the reasoning of the middle way. So when we study these, eventually we will ask ourselves, so how do we take all this immense collection of information and to use it on a daily basis? For my own meditation, how do I do this? So Kunkien Jamin Shepa composed this text, which puts it all in a very precise way and leads us how we can do it on a daily basis. So Kunkien Jamin Shepa was a Lama who came from the Gelug tradition, and we can ask ourselves, are these instructions of the view of emptiness according to the Gelugpa tradition? Are they also in other traditions? Are they concordant with what exists in other traditions? For example, what is the understanding of emptiness according to the Nyingma tradition? Is it different from the Gelug tradition? Is it completely contradictory to what is taught in emptiness in the Gelug tradition? What is the source for the teachings in the Gelug tradition? And what is the source for the teachings about emptiness in the Nyingma? So for those of us who are learning with a Lama, a spiritual teacher who came from the Nyingma teaching, and you want to listen to the teaching and ask yourself, will these teachings be different from what is taught in the Gelug? Are they contradictory? What is the source for these teachings? So we want to make sure that we're using an authentic source. So these questions might come up now or later. And this is what Rinpoche wanted to address today and in the next couple of days. Rinpoche said that for us it might be a complete waste of time because we have came here with so much effort to listen to the teachings, and this is what Rinpoche chooses to teach. Maybe it's a complete waste of time. It could be that it will be very beneficial as well. So let's see how it works. So, in addition, we're discussing morality and aspiring to benefit others, altruism, as well as practicing patience. So it's not that only Buddhism discusses morality and altruism being benefit to others. It's not that only Buddhism deals with compassion. There are many different religions and spiritual traditions that deal with these practices. So from the philosophical aspect, there are differences between different spiritual traditions and religions. But as for these practices of patience and benefiting others, morality, it could be that our way of being specific according to points and how to divide these different practices. It could be that it varies and is different among the different religions, but it could be that still in the different traditions these practices are done in a similar way. But what is really different is the philosophy, the philosophical view. The Dalai Lama said that when we look like 5,000 or 6,000 years looking back into history, and we see how the different religions were formed, we can see that there is kind of a concordant line between all of them. So this began with a wish to be happy, to be safe, and to refrain from suffering. In previous times of history, the wisdom of humans was still not developed. So, for example, in a cold night, when someone wanted to protect herself, they lit fire. So we can say that the fire was like a source for their prayers and protection, and also different elements of nature, like trees. People were praying to trees and were going for refuge to the trees, requesting the trees to protect them and to help them be happy. So these also with the different elements. So throughout history as humans, we have developed our wisdom and intelligence, and different religions have developed in order to give different practitioners the ability to use a spiritual practice in order to get to a deeper understanding of reality, and also to be happier. So also in Judaism, which is an old religion, Islam and Christianity, these were developed, and it could be that the way that we're discussing morality here and patience is different in terms and in categorization, but still these practices also exist in other religions. So the main difference is in the philosophical view. So it could be that it is possible to divide the religious traditions into ones who assert a god and one who do not assert a god. So theistic and non-theistic religions. Rinpoche says that religions who do not assert a god who has created all, it's not only Buddhism, but it is also different also religions. These are not theistic religions. There's so many religions, and we want to make sure that as Buddhists we develop the view according to Buddhism, which is extremely important, because developing the view of Buddhism is which will lead us to liberation and enlightenment, complete knowing of Buddhahood. So we want to develop the view of dependent arising, which has got a few different levels, dependent on causes and conditions, dependent on parts, and on mere label. So we want to develop this philosophical view, so that on the basis of it we can attain liberation, and beyond that the state of Buddhahood. So the Buddha taught all these teachings for different capacities of beings, different dispositions, in order to lead practitioners to a state of happiness and well-being. So one of the great teachings in the Buddhist tradition is Jetsun Kapa, Je Rinpoche. who composed a few texts, which one of them is Praises of Dependent Arising, which was taught by the Buddha. And in this text, Lama Tsongkhapa praises the Buddha for the teachings that he gave on the view of emptiness, which lead the practitioner to higher rebirths as humans or gods. So these the consequence of this is temporary, and beyond that, even permanent well-being. So there's the state of liberation or nirvana, and beyond that, enlightenment, this Buddhahood. So Lama Tsongkhapa praised the Buddha and said that with morality, the practice of morality, we can make sure that in our future births we will be reborn in higher states of humans or gods. And also by using practicing the view of dependent arising and emptiness, we can develop a way that will lead us to liberation and enlightenment. So for us, when we check the relevance for it to ourselves, so in a true and realistic way, we develop a view of emptiness, which will dependent on logic and reasonings which are correct. So developing this true mode of abidance of reality with reasoning is not something that we only do as Buddhists, but we can see also different religions that try to develop a true understanding of reality, but also science like quantum physics does this. So quantum physics and science uses reasoning and an investigation of reality in order to search for the true way that reality abides. So we want to investigate, to check, to see what is the true reality. This is what quantum physics does in science. So this is what we do in Buddhism when we investigate the philosophical view. And when we investigate it, we use an explanation which is unique, which is uncommon. We do not only want to develop academical knowledge, but we also want to use it in our own personal practice. This is not just academical study, but also a practical practice. And our practical practice becomes using the understanding of emptiness, of the true mode of abidance, in order to get rid of negative actions and develop positive actions, to engage in merit. So the philosophical view, is what aims to get our practice to be more powerful and effective. So when the Dalai Lama teaches the Buddha's teachings, he says that when we look in the history of human beings, we can see a process of progress of the wisdom, the human intelligence that didn't only begin in the lifetime of the Buddha, but began 3,000, 4,000 years before, and philosophical questions arose in human beings' minds. For example, people asked, "What is the I? Who is this self?" This was the first question. The second question: has the self got a beginning? And has the self got an end? These are the three questions that human beings deal with from the beginning of history. What is the I? Has the I got a beginning and an end? So the human beings have developed, our intelligence and wisdom have developed, and different explanations to these questions were brought. There are different traditions that answer these questions in a theistic, asserting a God in this kind of way. So they assert a God that created human beings, and there are also atheistic religions that do not assert a God, and they give an explanation as well to what this self, the I, is. So since as human beings we come from different traditions, things work for us in a different way. So different traditions were developed. And since they supply us certain needs, certain predispositions and tendencies, we cannot say that there is one religion that is above, that is the best, above the others and the best in the world. We can say that from the Buddhist philosophical view, It has got the vastest explanation, the profoundest one from, but it doesn't make Buddhism the best religion. We cannot say that there is the best religion, the best spiritual tradition, because as we cannot say that one medicine is the best medicine, a good medicine is good for a specific sick person. It could be that a very good, a very expensive medicine will be conducive to a specific state, and a very cheap medication will be beneficial for a specific state. So this is according to a specific individual what medicine is the most beneficial for them. So in a general way, we cannot say that this is the best medicine in the world. So we also say this about the religions that have developed for different practitioners. So in general, we can say that different religions have got different philosophical views, they've got different beliefs, but in an individual way, for the individual being, we want to use one religion. We believe in one thing. We have faith and trust in one thing, and this philosophical view is beneficial for us. It doesn't mean it's the best in the world. It is good and relevant for us. Because if eventually we do not hold to one view, to one belief, it will be like trying to sew a piece of clothing with a needle that has got two heads. And it will be like discussing one subject with a mind that which is indecisive and tries to come to some conclusion. So we say that in general, in a global way, there are many religions, and there is only one which is relevant for us. And for this, we develop belief and trust. So this is what His Holiness the Dalai Lama speaks about, and he says, Rinpoche says that when the Dalai Lama says this, he doesn't do it just in order to make different people happy. It's not just kind of flattery words, but it is a true and practical view, completely authentic. So, since we're discussing a need as an individual to choose a view that is correct for us, a belief that is good for us, let's start with the first question we discussed. What is the I? So we have discussed different traditions that develop the understanding of what the I or the self is. So let's put aside all the different religions and just look deeper into the Buddhist tradition. And we can see that the Buddha, the Bhagavan, taught for practitioners who also had different predispositions, different beliefs. So also within Buddhism, there are different schools of thought. There are some who investigate the I, the self, and come to a conclusion that we have 8 different minds, and one of them is called the mind basis of all. This asserts that what I am truly is this mind basis of all. So this is one tradition within Buddhism. And there are other traditions that say that the I is actually a mental mind, the main mental mind. There's a collection of traditions in Buddhism that assert that when we check what this self is, when we look for it, we have to find something, and therefore this which can be pointed to can be in the 5 aggregates. It can be a collection of the 5 aggregates. And in Buddhism, there are different schools of thought that come to these different conclusions. When I look for the I, what I find finally is the 5 aggregates, or the collection of the 5 aggregates. Or to one among the 5 aggregates, there is a true findable self. So these are different traditions within Buddhism, and there is also the Madhyamika Prasangika tradition, which says that when we search for the self, we cannot find it. When we search for the self, we cannot find it eventually, because the I exists on independence, on labeling. Once a self, my existence, is by mere name, and since it exists dependently by mere name, still the agent, the one who acts, and the object on which someone acts, and the action itself are all possible. They're all possible, tenable, even though when we search for the I, it cannot be found. So there are different schools of thought in Buddhism. In general, we can say that these different schools of thought can be divided into 4, that each one of them has got a specific way of understanding the I, of asserting it. As Rinpoche said, there's some schools of thought that say that when we search for the self, we can find something. And there the Prasangika that says when we search for the self, we cannot find it, but still the agent, the act, and the object are possible. So the Buddha himself, in one of the teachings that he gave, he approached bhikshus and said, "Don't accept what I say only because I have said it, but first make sure that you can accept what I have said by analyzing. Just like you take gold, which you are about to buy, so you will cut it, you will beat it, you will try and heat it with fire in order to make sure that the gold that you're about to buy is a true piece of gold." So the Buddha himself gave us this allowance to check everything that he said and not just accept it only because the Buddha himself said it, but to accept it only after we have analyzed it and we find that it has got true reasoning. So this is an extremely important thing. It is critical in Buddhism. So when we look at our own attitude, it wouldn't be correct, it wouldn't be proper if we think for ourselves that this is what I believe in, this is what I do just because the Buddha said it. So this is not the correct attitude. What we should do is to take a stand, to accept some kind of a belief or base understanding only after we have checked it, analyzed it ourselves. The Buddha said you can accept what I take, what I say, only like you have checked gold. So this is parallel for three different analysis which we can do to what the Buddha says. So what we need to do is to check that what the Buddha teaches is not hidden from what we ourselves can see. In reality, we can see some things directly. So we want to see, we want to make sure that what the Buddha said is not obscured by what we can see. And the second thing is to use inferential cognition. This is the second test that we should do. So there are two kinds of inferential cognitions. So there is one that analyzes that which is slightly hidden, and we use different reasonings in order to understand these phenomena. So we want to make sure that what the Buddha taught is not hidden with reasoning, by reasoning that is slightly hidden for us. There's some phenomena is extremely hidden, and our way for understanding these, or to make sure that they really exist, that they're true, is with reasoning that comprises with faith, according to what is said in the Buddhist teaching. So we want to make sure that the beliefs that we have, the trust that we have, the confidence in a specific point relating to the Buddhist teaching is faith which is based on analysis. So Rinpoche says that is pretty astonishing when he thinks about it, because the Buddha said that we shouldn't accept what he said without analysis. So as Buddhist practitioners, there are two different kinds of practitioners. There are some who have great capacity, and there are others who have lower capacity. So these are the sharp faculty, and they're like dull faculties of the inferior scope beings. So the great capacity beings are ones who are along the path. They analyze. They take upon themselves. They accept things only after they have completely checked and analyzed them. And the other scope being, the lower scope beings, they develop faith, and this is how they go along the way. So they are considered a faculty being. So our aim is to go along the Buddhist way, along our practice, with analysis and investigation. So in a way that is not only based on faith and trust. So it's not only the Buddha said it, but other Nagarjuna and other Pandits, they also accepted this way. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama himself said that as practitioners, Buddhist practitioners, we want to study, we want to analyze and check that to make sure that what the knowledge that we're developing can be validated, to have a valid understanding of what we take upon ourselves. So Nagarjuna, when Nagarjuna taught the philosophical teaching according to the Buddhist teaching, So he said that this specific, this teaching and the other teaching are according to the Vaibhashika school of thought, or this and other view is according to the Chitta-madra, the mind-only school of thought. But finally, we want to make sure that the views that we accept cannot be invalidated. We cannot find contradictions in it. So even Nagarjuna said that even since we can look at things from the Vaibhashika or the mind-only school of thought, but eventually the school of thought, the views that cannot be negated in any way, this is the Madhyamika Prasangika view. So Nagarjuna also used it reasoning in order to base this view, so that finally we generate a mind which is valid. So this is the way that we want to analyze the views that the Buddha taught. And if we do it in this way, we will allow Buddhism to stay with us for hundreds of years in the future. So this analysis, the setting the correct minds as to what the true mode of abidance of reality as Buddha taught it, is what will allow Buddhism to flourish for many, many years and eons. So with this, we will also be able to give service to the society that we live in. So this doesn't mean that giving service to society doesn't mean that we want to change their religion into Buddhist, but rather our aim is to develop our own mind so that we can be of greater benefit to the others. And if we develop an understanding, a valid understanding of reality, we will be of greater benefit to others in a proper way, which effectively we can benefit them. We can see that in the world today, that only engaging with technology doesn't allow the prosperity in humanity. Technology is insufficient. We also want to find other ways of being beneficial to others, to giving service by analyzing reality as the Buddha taught us. And in this way we can develop a true understanding and knowledge to be of greater benefit in service to others. And also in this way we will allow this tradition to stay with us for hundreds of years. If this is not our aim for engaging in the view, if it is only based on belief and on trust on what the Buddha said is true, and we do not check the things as they truly abide, Rinpoche wonders whether Buddhism will stay with us for only another few years. Can it stay with us for 60 or 70 years? Maybe not even that. It will flourish only if we investigate the things and make sure that for us they're completely true. So Buddha is called the Buddha Shakyamuni, and if we look at his life story from a historical point of view, we say that the Buddha was born in India. But when we look at the geography, Buddha, at the place where Buddha was born, it's actually in Nepal, in what is today Nepal. He was born in Lumbini in Nepal. So there are different stories of who his mother was, who Buddha Shakyamuni's father was. And there's different stories that are told from a traditional perspective. But when we look at what the Buddha taught, we look at it from academical, from a psychological point of view. And Rinpoche believes that from the psychological point of view, we can look at the Buddha as an amazing psychologist that investigated the human mind and found ways to change, to help people being peaceful and tamed. So this is from an academical point of view of scholars. And from a Buddhist point of view, we look at the Buddha as the one who attained the state, who has the four bodies of the Buddha. So we're gonna go to a break now. So we're gonna take a half an hour break, as was written in the schedule. We're gonna have a pee break. So in this way we can stay concentrated, and I will come back in at 11:15. So Chandrakirti, who was a Indian scholar, he composed a text which is engaging in the middle way, in which he explained about the view of selflessness. So the Buddha taught two kinds of selflessness, of phenomena and of the person, in order to lead all sentient beings to liberation. And our engaging in this subject is not only an academical one. It is not that we just want to understand it theoretically, but as Chandrakirti said, we want to use knowledge in order to change our way of being at the moment. So for that we need to acknowledge that as sentient beings, we want to attain happiness and we want to avoid suffering. But still, even though we aim for happiness, we can see that in our daily lives we still experience suffering and pain. And we do not manage to fulfill the happiness and well-being which we aspire for. So the Buddha taught selflessness in a vast way, while using hundreds of reasonings in order to prove for ourselves, so we can have certainty as for emptiness. So, and all the reasoning that the Buddha gave, all these hundreds of reasonings are intended for us to get to a conclusion as for selflessness of person and phenomena. So this is also what another scholar said. He was one of the students of the Buddha disciples, and he received teaching from the Buddha by asking questions. And he also said that the Buddha taught emptiness with giving lots of reasonings in a vast way in order to finally lead us as sentient beings to the state of liberation. And when the Buddha taught it, he taught the selflessness as for the 3 doors for liberation. And this means so when the Buddha taught these 3 doors of liberation, he spoke about the door of emptiness, the door of emptiness. So this means phenomena not having an inherent existence, and this is phenomena not having inherent production, and the door of the phenomena not having their own characteristics. So these are the 3 doors for liberation. And when the Buddha taught the view of emptiness and selflessness, he taught it while basing his reasoning that we all wish happiness and get rid of suffering. So we can use this view according to using these 3 doors so that we get what we want. And this is something which, with this view, we can definitely attain the happiness which we aspire for. As for other methods that we use daily, we do not have certainty to know that they will lead us to happiness and well-being which we wish for, and that we can refrain from suffering and pain. For example, a farmer who works in a field, he prepares the field and plants that which he wants to grow, but he has no certainty that what he plants will grow. Maybe in Israel we have greater certainty. We have got a kind of dripping system. We have a computer that controls the water system. So maybe we have a greater ability to control the growth. But historically and generally, we can say that a farmer has prepared the field in a excellent way, but still there is no certainty that what he grows will grow well. So in the same way, for people who have business, for example, someone who works in fashion or in fashion design, prepares the winter clothes in the summer. So when they're working in the summer, it is they cannot know if the winter is going to be really cold, if the business will flourish. But there is still a hope and belief that it will be fine. So even though we try in various ways to attain happiness and well-being, we do not have certainty to know that things will turn out well. So in the same way, Rinpoche says, it's about traffic lights. For example, we stand in a traffic light and we have certainty that the green light will come and then we can cross the road. And when the traffic light shows red, we just stand and stop. But what would have happened if we had the belief that in a green light we can cross, and then suddenly while we're crossing the line it will change into red and the cars will start to drive. We have the security or the faith that things will turn out fine, that we can cross the road, but actually we do not have complete certainty that that is what will happen. We do not think about it, we just assume that things will be fine, but we do not have the complete certainty that what will turn out like that. So as for happiness and suffering, we also think that things will turn out fine, but we can actually say that we still have lots of doubt. So the Buddha taught us a path that can, in a way that we can use the selflessness that will lead us to happiness and well-being, which are certain, which are everlasting. The Buddha taught this while teaching the view with hundreds of reasonings in a very vast way. He taught the selflessness of person and the emptiness of phenomena, and all these points were taught with reasoning in order to lead us to liberation. Yaki said it looks like you've understood, that we don't need to translate. So the Buddha Bhagavan, the Buddha represents for us all the Buddhas of the three times. So it's not only the Buddha Bhagavan, but also the Indian Panditas from the Nalanda tradition, like Nagarjuna and his two main disciples, different Pandits from the Nalanda tradition. They taught this part of the Buddha's teaching in such a vast, with so many ways, with so many reasonings that give reasons for the view of emptiness. And this was all meant for us so that we'll be able to generate valid cognitions. So all these teachings are meant for us so that we ourselves can generate valid cognitions. So they were taught for our benefit. Subjects like the emptiness and dependent arising were taught for us, so that in this way we can gradually remove the obscurations of the cognitive and the afflictive obscurations. So all this knowledge is there for us, and if we use it, we'll be able to get a complete understanding of the true mode of abidance of reality. So the knowledge is there, the teachings are there, they're available for us to use. But if we look at the way we live our daily life, we're so busy with things that are only for this life. There's just these mere appearances of things. We do not have any certainty to know that all the things that we aspire for in this life, we will eventually get them. So we have hopes. We aspire to get these things, but we do not have a certainty to know that things will turn out as we wish for them to be. So Rinpoche said that things that are related to this life have not got any certainty. We cannot count on them completely. But still, we do rely on them with our body, speech and mind, with a belief that they can give us eventually that which we want in this present life. And it's not only that in this life we take actions with hoping that in dependence on that we can develop well-being and happiness and avoid suffering. But it doesn't mean that this perfect happiness which we seek is actually there. It's not that we don't have certainty that it will work for us. But also many times the things that we do that are meant to bring us happiness, they actually cause us suffering. Things that are meant to work well actually become things that cause us harm. So here we have the teachings of the Buddha and the great scholars of India that teach us the view of emptiness and selflessness. So that what we should take on ourselves and what we should get rid of or stop doing. So all these teachings are available for us, but still sometimes we think that we want to do it, but we don't have time to do it. I don't have sufficient time. I can't invest time in meditation and study. Is this really the fact, or is it just that our priorities is mistaken? So what we can say that our priorities are mistaken, so that what for most of us what is not really important we consider as the main thing which we engage in, and things that are really important we invest so little time in. So if you think I don't have enough time to do it, so then in general it means that your time preference is mistaken. In the Kadampa tradition, which has been practiced for about 1,000 years, so it says that if someone says, oh, I've meditated meditation for so long, but eventually I didn't manage to get realizations. So the master said, don't mislead me, don't lie. If you say that you've practiced so long meditation, did you really practice for so long? In 1 year, how long did you actually meditate? Maybe half your time. Maybe half your time was wasted on sleeping, and also breakfast and lunch and dinner. And how much time did you invest in food, in preparing it and eating it in the 3 meals? And what about other things that you do during the day? Eventually, if we break down how much time we invest in meditation, we might recognize that it's only a few minutes. So what about this feeling that we have practiced for so long, but still we have no realizations? As this scholar said, eventually, just don't mislead me. This is lying. This is not a practice if your priority is mistaken. So, looking at what we're mostly engaged in during the day, it is things that are related to our 5 senses. Most of our effort is by running after and trying to get things that are for our senses. So most of our time in this life is meant to please our senses, the body. So we engage in things that in Tibetan it works is the word chalak. So Tibetan language is based on different syllables, and when you put them together, there is a particular meaning with a new idea. So what we use today is called chala. It's just things. So it's made of the two syllables cha and lak. So there's some things that we can attain by putting our hands forward, and so these are the things that we use, but then we lose them. So we wanna get something, but also then we lose it. So lak means also hand, and it also means getting rid of losing something. So we make an effort to attain something, and then eventually it is taken away from us or lost. So most of the time we invest in these kinds of things. So it has a very nice and poetic meaning in Tibetan. Maybe in English or Hebrew it doesn't work like that. So when we look at our priorities, our spiritual priority, we can see that often we are engaged in things that are less important, and with aims that are meant only for this present life. Priority is mistaken. One of the famous Indian pandits was Aryadeva, who composed 400 verses on the middle way. And in one of this verse, those who have little merit do not even have doubt, and those who have even a slight doubt they turn cyclic existence into shreds. So the ones who do not have merit, they do not even doubt. And those who even have a slight doubt, they begin to completely tear apart cyclic existence. So what Aryadeva refers to in this verse is that the ones who have complete realization of emptiness, of course, they can attain liberation on the basis of a true understanding of reality. Of course, that is possible, but also the ones who do not have a complete understanding of reality as it is, even if they only have a mere doubt, or they have only a slight understanding of reality and the way that things really exist, by investigating and thinking and meditating, they can reduce the afflictive obscurations, the attachment, the aversion and ignorance. These will be reduced even if the understanding of reality is partial. So we can look even how it works for us. If we do not have a perfect understanding of how things abide in reality truly, if we do not have this realization, we can still use our understanding to reduce our own afflictions. So, of course, there is still suffering and pain that we experience, but physically. But the main thing is not dealing with our body, but mainly the pain, the desperation that we feel mentally. And even if we only have a partial understanding of reality, we can use this in order to reduce our mental suffering. Lama Tsongkhapa, who was an Indian scholar, he wrote the praise to dependent arising, and in one of the verses, he related to the teachings of the Buddha. As for the deep paths and of the ways, the vast way and the profound view and the logical way. He said that if all the teachings of the Buddha, with all these teachings, we can completely get rid of our obscurations of the faults of the mind. But even if we do not get to a valid and complete understanding of everything that the Buddha said, but only a partial understanding, and even if it isn't a complete realization of all these points of the Buddha, even if we only have correct assumptions, we can also use this in order to attain some mental peace. So that it is, so we attain a well-being. So Lama Tsongkhapa said that it's a result of happiness. The result is happiness from this even partial realization. So in this praises of dependent arising, and in the two texts, and also that Aryadeva composed, of course they were composed by different scholars, but they come to the same point. So these things were mentioned by Rinpoche in order to give us inspiration or motivation for engaging in the teachings of the current teachings. So Rinpoche wants to add a few words about this subject. We have mentioned the text of Ramatsongkhapa, the 400 verses on the middle way. So we do not only want to praise what the Buddha said, only because he said it, but we want to do it by understanding what the Buddha said. So in this text of Aryadeva, as it is said in English,
so all afflictions depend on ignorance. By destroying ignorance, you will come to destroy all. And
so what Aryadeva spoke about in this verse is that just like sensual senses perceptions rely on the body. Just like the mind, just as the mind prevails the body, that is how the ignorance pervades in all the afflictions. So this is what Aryadeva said in the middle way. So it says that once we get rid of the ignorance, we will get rid of all the afflictions. And he also encouraged us to make effort in developing the dependent arising in order to get rid of ignorance, and in that way to get rid of all the afflictions. So if we look at physical experiences that we can have, say we can have an eye infection, if we take specific eye medicine, it will help us to cure the eye sickness. It will not help us to get rid of ailments in our ears or in our tongue. And if we have an ear infection and we take medication, correct medication for the ear, it will help the ear, but it won't help different parts of the body. If there is a medicine that is holistic that will work on all the body, for example, antibiotics, which is strong medication, it can help all the ailments in our body. So this is just an example of the way that we want to apply the antidotes to our afflictive obscurations. There are different techniques that the Buddha taught in order to work on a local way on the obscurations. He said that when we feel attachment, we can meditate upon the aspects which are unattractive in the object of our attachment. This is only like it's a local antidote, or when we are angry, we can develop patience. When we're ignorant, we can meditate about the phenomenon, the way it is distinguished into different categories, in order to lessen the intensity of our ignorance. But these are antidotes which are only local, they're only suitable for specific situations. But beyond that, there is an antidote which is vast, and this is the teaching and the meditation about emptiness of phenomena and selflessness of the person. And this is the antidote for all of the different afflictive states of mind, so that we can dispel them completely. So this requires effort and hard work. And this effort and hard work, eventually, they will bring us to get rid of the complete ending to all the afflictions, and in this way we can attain complete happiness and well-being. And we can use the emptiness and selflessness in order to so they don't control our state of mind. So we have these antidotes, and we can, and in reality maybe sometimes we have attachment and anger, but we can use these antidotes in order to prevent them controlling our minds. So how comfortable it is, how easily we can take care of our situation if we do not let these afflictions control our mind. So after Rinpoche has given us this introduction on the view, now he wants to go over the text of Kunkin Jameng Chiba, in which we so Rinpoche has given me the text only recently, so I have tried to translate it into some parts. It is not a perfect translation. Gyaki's saying he's done it into English, and while he's translating, he will do it into Hebrew. So initially, Rinpoche intend to give us a complete explanation, line after line, because he himself doesn't have the lung for this text. So we just wanted to take some essential points to help us think about the selflessness of person and phenomena. So, in a concise and short way, how we can think about them and do analytical meditation. There are two kinds of meditation. There is placement meditation and there is analytical meditation. So this text explains to us how we can think and meditate about the lack of self. So, since Rinpoche said he will extract some points from the text, in the beginning. So this text was taken from a collection of teachings that the scholar taught in the third volume. Out of the explanation of specific subjects. So in this text, after the beginning, the Domain Shiva pays respect to some teachers, and then he goes to the main text and he says that in the main explanation there is the preliminary. To meditate about the yogas of the spiritual teacher that has come from the tradition. So we want to begin with the preliminary practices. So he explains the Guru Yoga. So Rinpoche says that we can do this meditation in a comfortable and simple way for us. If there are people here who are used to and like to read the Heart Sutra, that is a kind of dialogue with question and answers between Shariputra and Avalokiteshvara, we can do the meditation in that way. So in front of us we have the the painting of the Buddha, so we can imagine this situation that Shariputra and Avalokiteshvara had a dialogue in the presence of the Buddha Bhagavan. So in general, we say Shariputra was one of the heroes. He was a hero, Shravaka. He was a disciple of the Buddha in a community of heroes. And also other beings were in these teachings. There was Avalokiteshvara Chenrezig, who is a deity or a god. So we can think about it like that. And in one of Rinpoche's visits in Japan, he encountered a Tanka painting. There was an incident from the Heart Sutra of the Buddha sitting in the middle. On his right there was Shariputra, and on his left, on the Buddha's left, was Chenrezig Avalokiteshvara. By the way, when I say that in the Tanka there were different paintings of different people, some were quite weird, some were red-haired, some had a long nose, he doesn't know why, some had ginger hair, and some had a pink nose, a red nose, a long nose. So Shariputra in this Tanka is painted as a monk. And Chenrezig, who is on the left of the Buddha, is painted as a deity. So Rinpoche says that this showing the situation in this way is quite suitable to think of Shariputra as a monk and Avalokiteshvara as a deity or a god. So later on in the text, as for the actual part, after he spoke about the preliminary practice, there are 2 points that we want to focus on the practice. The way to determine the 2 selflessnesses through study and reflection, and having determined then the way to practice. So these 2 points, they focus on the way to get to a determination as to the selflessness of person and the selflessness of phenomena. So the first part will discuss the selflessness of person, and the second one getting to the conclusion of the selflessness of phenomena. As for that person and phenomena, Rinpoche said that In the last teaching, we spoke about different traditions that analyze who the self is. Does the self have a beginning? Does the self have an end? And as we said, our interest in the next few days is going to be who the self is. So here we have the selflessness of the person, and the second part will discuss the selflessness of phenomena. So me being the self, I am a labeled phenomenon. I'm labeled on a specific basis. The basis is the 5 aggregates. So the self discusses the selflessness of the person, and then of phenomena. So the selflessness of phenomena are these 5 aggregates, which are the basis of imputation. So as for the first point, which is determining the selflessness of persons, there are 4 points, such as asserting the object of negation. So there are these 4 points, but actually the text discusses only the first point, the point of asserting the object of negation. What is it that we're wishing to negate? We're wishing to negate a self which does not exist in reality. So we want to come to a certain understanding. And the other points which are not mentioned in this text, but Rinpoche just mentioned them. Is it pervasive? So this is the second point. We want to know what this object of negation is. So we want to know if it pervades everything. This is the second point. And the third one is that if we want to use a specific logic that has rules, we want to make sure that the format of analyzing is correct, that logically it makes sense. So that each organ, so that every reasoning that we give has got different parts, so we want to make sure that our reasoning are correct. So the third part is checking our reasoning to prove the selflessness. So whether the reasoning is correct, whether our theory or thesis is correct. So this is what we check in the third part, and the fourth part is the actual reasoning. Which analyzes whether it uses reasoning like is something one phenomenon in itself, or is it a phenomenon that has got parts, or maybe they're different. Rinpoche said we will not go into all these details, so we will not try to understand them all now. Since the text only discusses the first point, this is what we're going to deal with. So this first point is determining the selflessness of persons. So this is understanding completely the object of negation. So Shantideva, in his way of engaging in the Bodhisattva way, in the 9th chapter,
you will not understand how it doesn't exist in a way it is apprehended.
So Shantideva said that without coming in touch, without engaging with the object, with our exact object, we will not be able to understand how it doesn't exist in the way that the mind apprehends it. So what Shantideva meant to say is that we want to understand the selflessness of a person. For example, in order to understand that, we need to understand where in the way that the mind is mistaken. If we do not understand how the mind is mistaken in the way that it apprehends the self, we cannot negate this object of negation. So first we need to understand how it apprehends the self, what the mistake is, in which way it's mistaken as to the self, and then we can negate it. So we need to understand that the way the self is grasped is mistaken. So when we start to investigate the object of negation, we need to understand how the self is mistaken in grasping, in apprehending the self. So as Rinpoche said, when we check this first question, as to of the three first of the questions that were mentioned before, what the self is. So most of us have come from a Jewish background, and in the Jewish background and other religions, there is a belief as for the self, how the self exists. Jamyang Shepa, when he speaks about the object of negation, he says that there are different positions in the way that the self thinks of, as one thinks about oneself. So there is the self, and then there are different views about how we apprehend ourselves. Jamyang Shepa invites us to think about the different ways that we apprehend ourselves. For example, Rinpoche said that from the Jewish religion, that asserts all creator God. So our view for the self, for God, is a permanent, unitary, and independent self. So we apprehend God to be permanent. It wasn't created by someone else, but that was always existent. It is permanent. And it is independent of parts. So unitary means a being of like one piece, and it doesn't mean that it is even, but that it can just not be broken into parts, into individual things. We apprehend God to be something that can't be divided. It's unitary. And the third word is that independent. It is not dependent on on a process of coming into existence, or it doesn't disintegrate. So, in general, this is the way that we apprehend God, and God is that which created us. This is the belief in the Jewish religion. So there is a being that is permanent, that it is unitary, and it is independent, that has created us as individuals. And the way that we exist is by another being, a being with a different self, so that God has got one kind of existence, and ours is different. So here, when we want to negate a particular self, the self that we want to negate is a self that is different. It is an object which is different from the God's kind of existence. So what we want to negate is a permanent, independent, unitary self. So this object of negation, as acquired intellectually, it is not an object of negation that we have in an innate, in a natural way. So believing in a God, believing in the self that is unitary, independent self. It is not a belief that all people have. It is in places that we are taught as kids. It is acquired intellectually. We're not born with it. And in addition, we can check other beings like animals who do not have this grasping to a permanent, unitary, independent self. So this is completely acquired. Not only is it acquired, but also when we check the meaning of it, of the self that exists like that, if the self is permanent, it is unitary, and it is independent. It means that me being like that is permanent, is unchanging. I am permanent, unchanging. It cannot change, and it also doesn't have the ability to bring any results. Something which is permanent cannot produce a result. So, in front of Rinpoche, behind us there's a Tango, the wheel of life. And when the Buddha taught the wheel of life, this teaching, he spoke about the connection between causes and results. He said that this specific thing is a result, and these are the causes that bring this result. So from ignorance, in this wheel of life, and how is ignorance? How does ignorance become a result? So ignorance brings this and that result, the Buddha explained. So not only did the Buddha explain the connection between causes and results, but he also explained that results come to life in dependence on causes. They do not come to life in an independent way, independently of causes. But also the results, they come into existence in a specific set of causes, a collection of causes which are concordant. A result cannot come into life with causes and conditions that are completely incompatible. So there is some correlation between a cause and its result. And therefore, when we look at the self, we can see a self that we look at the way that the self abides, and we see that it doesn't make sense to see the self as permanent, unitary, and independent because of our characteristics. Because of impermanence, potential, ability, dependency on causes and conditions. So, because our existence is impermanent, we have potential. So it cannot be. It doesn't make sense that we are permanent, that we are unitary and independent. So now time has ended. Let's take a break. Sorry, I'm just saying the main thing again. So you need to. So the main thing is to check where you are, to find the self, that which is called the self. So each one of us has a name. If you ask yourself, who am I as the name I have? So this is what we want to check. This is what we want to analyze. So think about this during the break.